so much for joining me today. This is Corey here with another episode of a Drunk Mad Podcast. Just arrived back from Las Vegas, Nevada not too long ago, and a little bit tired, but I want to make sure I did get something uploaded for y'all today. This is going to be the audio of the tour I took at the Punk Rock Museum on Saturday. It is amazing. So if you're ever in Las Vegas, I highly recommend you check it out. This tour specifically has Riki Rachtman as our guest tour guide. We'll also be hearing from Raucous, who is the bass player in the Vermin and various other bands. He's so awesome. He allowed me to play a bunch of dream guitars that I never thought I would ever see, let alone play. It was an incredible experience. Anything from Tim Armstrong's guitar he used on early Rancid, as well as Fat Mike's touring bass, Alkaline Trio guitar. There's a great Gogol Bordello part, so stay tuned for that. It was fantastic. So I do hope you all enjoy. I did meet Fat Mike. I got to meet Fat Mike. I asked him what albums he used that bass on, and his answer was, I don't know, man. And then he kicked some things over. So he basically the experience you would expect from Fat Mike. But I'll go ahead and let the recording play for the next about hour and a half or so. So enjoy. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Yeah, the other people.
Hello.
Hi.
If you guys are part of my tour, come on in. Hi. Real quick, I'll introduce myself. My name is Riki Rachtman. Most people know me. I had a job for several years on a show called Headbanger Fall on MTV. I also own the greatest rock and roll pub in the world called the Cat House. And most people know me from the heavy metal scene, which I'm very, very proud of. However, I grew up in Los Angeles, and what a lot of people don't know is I really come from the punk rock scene, and most people always know. Back in the early days, even though I loved my metal, I never saw bands like Rat play the Whiskey, and I never saw stuff like that because I was always going to punk rock shows back then. And when I look at a lot, what people don't realize is a lot of the metal that we listen to, like thrash bands, you wouldn't have had if it wasn't for punk rock. You know, my all-time favorite band of all time was Motorhead, and I've always said Motorhead is a punk rock band. So we'll start right now in here. If you have any questions regarding anything, feel free to ask. I don't care. Like, where's everybody coming from first?
Bay Area.
From the Bay Area?
Philly.
Oregon.
Missouri.
Missouri?
So it's the same.
Missouri.
Very cool. Guys in Vegas just to...
For the moto show.
Huh?
For the moto show.
I know, I gotta go. I'm trying to
Did you do it today?
I know.
We did it last
year.
week. Yeah, we did it yesterday.
Yeah.
It was good.
I'm trying to go. I'm real quick, and don't worry, you're gonna hear me talk a long time. I'm not, but this year I ride motorcycles pretty far,
Yeah.
and this year I'm gonna ride from Charlotte, North Carolina to Key West, Florida, back to Charlotte to Texas. I'm gonna do an iron boat, which is 1,000 miles in 24 hours to Cheyenne, Wyoming. Then I'm gonna go to Calgary. Then I'm gonna spend 4th of July in Alaska. Then I'm going to Bellingham, Washington. And then I might go back to the East Coast. I don't know. Every year I pick a different trip.
What are you riding?
I ride,
What are you riding?
This year I'm riding a Harley Davidson Pan America, which is an adventure bike made by Harley. I've usually been doing on Indians. As I've said, I've done more miles than anybody in rock and roll on a motorcycle, and I know less about motorcycles more than anybody living. Okay. I always say that whenever I've done it. Whenever I talk about that, I always say I've done more miles on a motorcycle than anybody, with the exception of Neil Perry.
Yeah.
That's the only person. And I know nothing about motorcycles at all. So since you brought that up, I will talk about that. Now, it's always fun for me to talk about this room because I have a lot of stories about this room, and some of them have to do with metal, some of them have to do with just me growing up. And what you also find is this: if you've never been to the Punk Rock Museum, it's basically separated in 2 different floors. And a lot of stuff we have here is a lot of the old school stuff, a lot of the history, a lot of the proto-punk, the bands who started the punk rock scene. And upstairs we have a lot of the newer bands. And I am pretty much a first floor guy. I don't know a real lot about the stuff on the second. So So it might seem like, holy crap, if he's still down here and we've been here for 30 minutes, he's still talking, how am I going to get through the whole music? Well, when we get upstairs, there's something very cool. Has anybody ever been here before? This place is rad. The reason that I come here, and this is my second time doing tours here, the reason that I come here is I truly, truly love this museum. I love everything about it. I love most of the people that work here, and I just have a really, really good time here. I do like the heavy metal museum that they have here by Brian Slagle. I've never been there, but I'm sure it's really, really good. But I personally want to do tours here because I'm so passionate about this kind of music. So we'll start really quickly talking, and if I take a lot of time, please understand that as when we get upstairs, I'm going to go, all right, walk around. I don't really know that much about Sum 41 or Taking Back Sunday. I'm sorry, nothing wrong with any of those bands. And again, if you have any questions about metal, punk rock, or anything about motorcycles except for working on them, I can tell you about that as well. Okay, so the reason that we like starting in this, that I like starting in this room, is a couple things that actually crossed over into my rock and roll room. And we'll start here with Minor Threat, which of course is one of the big DC bands. Now the reason that I mention Minor Threat is Minor Threat has Brian Baker in the band. Brian Baker also is playing in Bad Religion right now. And if any of you like into 80s rock at all? Yeah. Well, Brian Baker also used to come to my club, the Cat House, all the time because he played in a band called Junkyard, which kind of had a hit and they were on MTV. And here we have a band called X-Ray Specs. Now, when I first got into punk rock, I was really into the Los Angeles Orange County bands, but there are a couple bands that we were into as kids, like 999, of course, the Pistols and the Clash. But I liked a lot of the Sham 69, Cockney Rejects, all that stuff. But X-Ray Specs was a band that was really, really interesting. They always had saxophone. They had a song that was sort of a hit called Bondage Up Yours. And they had a song called I'm a Poser and I Don't Care. Now, these days, we tend to use the word poser to explain somebody that really isn't part of the scene. They're just dressing like they're acting. And before, a poser was like, they just kind of like to stand out and make people look at them and stare at them. We used to have a store on Sunset that was called Poser, and that's where all the punk rockers bought their clothes. And I used to always love that song, I'm Poser. Little did I know that as I started working for MTV, I would be called the word for the next 30 years. So then we'll move on to this. Another great band from Los Angeles, the Bags. And this picture, there's going to be certain areas where I'm going to talk a little bit and a lot of stuff where I'm going to not talk. And because of that, I want you to just look around some of the stuff because every time I walk through here, there's stuff that I didn't notice or I forgot to talk about. So when we do the tour, we'll walk through here, we'll see stuff, and then by all means, kind of keep up with me. And then when I'm done with the tour, by all means, walk through the tour again and spend more time. Like, I don't know what some of your favorite bands are, but maybe like, oh, I want to see the area of the Damned, or I want to see this. So go through. So some areas I'm just going to breeze over, and some areas I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about, like this picture right here. Are any of you familiar with the band The Germs? Okay. Because I know that a lot of times when I come here, people are expecting me to talk just about like Motley Crue. And you know, I have nothing against that rock. That's what I'm known for. I like talking about punk rock. And The Germs were the band for me. I saw The Germs was my second punk rock show I went to, and I was quite positive that I was watching the worst band that I had ever seen. Darby Crash was out of control. He would mumble through his words. He was drunk. He was plucked up. He was laying on the dirt. And as I kept on watching The Germs, I kind of started worrying like, this kind of band's kind of brilliant. And Darby Crash was such a great writer, and he used to use words with a lot of big vocabulary. So I started learning words from Darby Crash, and when I played in a rock and roll band on the Sunset Strip called Virgin, don't worry, I know you never heard of it, I actually used certain lyrics from his songs to put in my like 80s rock songs. But the reason that I like this picture so much is that's my skateboard. And this was an apartment that Darby lived on Franklin, and I was probably about 17 years old. My sister was 15, and the producer of The Germs' first album was there. Does anybody know who the producer of the first Germs album was? Joan Jett. Joan Jett produced the first album, even though the story goes that she really didn't really do anything, but she was there at that point too, and I was like, that's a big thing, the Runaways, you know? Rancid is a band that okay, this is how I know I'm old, okay? I mean, I know I'm old anyway, but I really know I'm old when I say, I listen to new bands, I listen to a lot of new music, and the new music that I've listened to has been around for like 20 years. You know, like, okay, I'm wearing a Lamb of God shirt. I really love the band Lamb of God. And I'm like, they're like, oh, Riki, do you listen to new bands? I'm like, yeah, I listen to Lamb of God. They're a new band. I'm like, they've been together for like 20-something years, you know? Rancid, I still look at it as like a newer band, even though they're not a newer band. But I always liked Rancid. Rancid was one of the bands that I did wear their shirts on Headbanger's Ball. And sometimes people would give me like, why are you wearing a Rancid? Because I wear Rancid. The one thing about, did any of you ever watch Headbanger's Ball, or was that before any other time?
Yeah.
It was a heavy metal video show, if you didn't know that. And I never picked any videos ever on the show. And so even though I was giving people Slayer and Motley Crue and stuff like that, on the second episode of Headbanger's Ball in 1990, I was wearing a German shirt. And I had hair down to here. And I was still wearing certain punk rock band shirts on Headbanger's Ball while I was giving everybody the Dio videos, which I still love. You know, everybody thinks you one or the other. I love both. You know, I also love rockabilly, so. Okay. Now, I will also talk about this picture, because this picture is great. And I'm gonna say a lot of pictures that have to do with me, 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 me. And don't worry, I'm not gonna talk about me, me, me all the time, but I do because I like to talk about me, me, me. So there was a big festival that they had in Los Angeles last year that was called the No Values Festival. And every punk rock band played there, including a band called the Cro-Mags, which in my opinion, the Cro-Mags were a band that really helped cross over hardcore and metal. And one of the singers, the bass player, and also now the singer of the Cro-Mags, is a guy named Harley Flanagan. And if you ever want to listen to his book, listen to his book, that's what they do now. He's got a book. Harley Flanagan was crazy. He was a little kid. His mom was in a band called The Stimulators, and he was a drummer, and he was in fights, and was in jail, and was always a scary, scary person. And when I went to the No Values Festival, I was like, there's Harley Flanagan, you know? And he's, you know, older than me, and he had, you know, no shirt on. He just still looked like he could just like really, really hurt people. And he came up to me and he said, hey, Riki, hey. And we became friends and we changed numbers and I was just really, because I was so scared of this guy. Now, the reason that I bring him up is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Cro-Mags. They're just like a no shit, like fuck you hardcore band. That's Harley. So this cute kid Harley was around the scene when he was so young. Imagine being a little kid and having a picture of you with Joe Strummer from The Clash. I mean, that's pretty badass, right? So a lot of people have different ideas of where they think punk rock started. You know, a lot of people think that punk rock started with the Sex Pistols. Well, actually in America, we had bands that I believe really paved the way. And again, I'm gonna talk a lot less as we start walking through the tour. There were bands that I think really paved the way for punk rock that were from America, like the Ramones, like, okay, Motorhead wasn't American, but like the MC5, you know, like Iggy Pop, like the New York Dolls, which the New York Dolls were really the biggest influence on a lot of the glam bands that we had in the 80s. Still love the New York Dolls. But if you ask me, what's the first punk rock song? You can actually go to the 50s and hear songs like, you know, have you heard about the bird? Like, that's kind of a punk rock song. To me, one of the first punk rock songs is The Who, My Generation. Mm-hmm. If you think I'm talking about, like, that's kind of raw. And I've always said, like, the Kinks, I look at that as like one of the metal songs, one of the first punk rock songs, because it was distorted, and it was like, that's my opinion. But as we walk through here, we see some of the bands that were so influential in starting the punk rock scene. This is funny, with New York Dolls and an opening band called Kiss. Don't really know what happened to them. And the greatest thing is the New York Dolls dressed like, I mean, you talk about the 80s glam scene, they dressed like women. The singer was also David Johansen, was also known maybe later as Buster Poindexter, who had that song Hot, Hot, Hot. And New York Dolls is just a very, very, very influential band. So we have obviously some stuff from the New York Dolls and the Ramones. First punk rock show I ever went to was the Ramones in 1979, playing UCLA. And still love the Ramones. You know, when we were punkers and kids, we didn't like long hair. Fuck bands with long hair, even though the Ramones had long hair. And the punks, I'm going to talk about this band a lot. The punks liked Motorhead too. I don't know if any of you were Motorhead fans, but Motorhead's the one band that like everybody back then liked Motorhead. I mean, I have some Motorhead stories that are very personal that I'll tell you later. I have 2 Motorhead tattoos, and I have 3 band tattoos, and I'll tell you what they are as we walk through here. Except one of them is Rolling Stones, and I'm not gonna. There's no Rolling Stones here as far as I know. Runaways, Joe Jett, Lita Ford. And some of the stuff I just looked through, and I walk through here, and I look at some of this stuff the same way that some of you would be. The Heartbreakers, Johnny Thunders. This is a shirt that was worn by Debbie Harry Blondie in a photo. One of the there's a lot of great things about this museum, but one of the great things is some of the stuff you hear, you see, is authentic, is really written with. Well, this was the bass that was actually played by the Ramones, and these are shirts that were worn by the Ramones, and there's just a lot of stuff in here, and it's really authentic. And as I say, when we go through here, by all means, walk through here again so you can see some of the stuff I missed, or you might see something and you're like, wow, Riki was so full of shit when we did that.
Do you ever have any interaction with the Ramones?
Yeah, I used to have a talk radio show in Los Angeles. Actually, the Ramones were on Headbangers Ball. And there was a talk radio show that I did in LA called Riki Rachtman Radio. And I had the Ramones on right when they were playing their final show. And the Ramones' final show, they had Eddie Vedder up on stage with them. They had Duff on stage. It was really, really cool. This is Johnny Thunder's gig bag. I cannot confirm or deny that this is also where he used to keep his heroin, but I'm pretty sure it was. We also have a lot of stuff from the Cramps, from the Misfits. It's really great to look at one of the early photos of the Misfits, because you look at Glenn Danzig and you look at their old Misfits photo and it looks more like they could be Loverboy or something like that. But Misfits was a great band that you listen to, and you know the influences there are like Elvis Presley and roots rock and roll. Wendy O. Williams from the Plasmatics, another incredible artist that we lost to suicide, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And here's where people kind of like, okay, he's lost his mind. This guy right here, in my opinion, and this is probably a fucked up thing to say in this museum, is without a doubt one of the most overrated musicians in the world. Sid Vicious is iconic in punk rock, and I hate to say this, and I'll probably get struck by that, but the guy was fucking talentless. Sid Vicious really couldn't play any instruments, but he was an icon when it comes to punk rock. And here we go, I'll tell another story. The guy that was really trying to teach him bass for the longest time, but finally gave up and said, I can't teach him bass, was Lemmy from Motorhead. So I have a lot of Lemmy stories, and even Motorhead said that they were like a punk rock band. If you ever listen to the first album, that's a punk rock album. But Lemmy tried to teach Sid Vicious bass, and really never could. Joe Strummer asked me about the one band that I never saw live that I wish I did is The Clash. I never saw The Clash live. A lot of
said that same thing so many times.
Was due to a guy named Malcolm McLaren. Now, Malcolm McLaren helped put together some of the big punk rock bands, and Malcolm McLaren and a designer named Vivian Westwood had a store in England called Sex. And this jukebox is exactly like, I don't think this is the real jukebox that was at Sex, but this music that's in here was the same music that was in here. And if you ever look at some of the music, whether it's, Eddie Cochran's Something Else, which ended up being covered by Sid, and you look like a lot of old songs or old roots rock and roll that ended up being covered by Johnny Thunders, that ended up being covered by the Sex Pistols. And up here, again, we're going to walk kind of quickly through here. Billy Idol, that when it came to the punk rock scene and Generation X, I don't know if you're familiar with Generation X, but just a really good, in my opinion, kind of pop band. But Billy Idol was obviously this gorgeous singer, named himself Idol. I mean, come on. When it comes to like, my name's Billy Idol. And I'm very looking forward to he's going out on tour soon. His guitarist, Steve Stevens, actually lives in Las Vegas. And I like Billy Idol. I saw a show in Los Angeles with Billy Idol singing nothing but Van Halen songs. Isn't that weird? Like certain things to see. Dan is still playing, still sounds great. You know, one of the originators, I think, of the whole kind of goth punk thing. And we talk about bands that Malcolm McLaren was a big part of. We've got Billy Idol, we've got Susie and the Banshees, we've got Adam and the Ants, and since you did mention that some of you know about the band The Germs, there's a picture that I posted on social media of me going to Universal Studios tour with Darby Crash from The Germs, because I knew Darby. And Darby had come back from England with this tall, thin mohawk. And he used to talk about this band that he saw in England that was the most incredible band he ever saw. And the band that he was talking about was Adam and the Ants. And above Adam, we see Annabella. Annabella sang in a band called Bow Wow Wow, that of course had a huge hit called I Want Candy. But her first songs was a song called Sexy Eiffel Towers. And she's going like, and she's panting like she's having sex. I think she was like 13 or 14 years old when she recorded that song. We're moving into some of the music that, again, this is the stuff that I can talk a lot about because this is a scene that was very important to me. When you would go to punk rock shows back in late 70s, early 80s, it was not uncommon to see the Go-Go's as one of the opening act. And the Go-Go's sounded exactly like the Go-Go's did with all the $1 Million hits. A matter of fact, at one point, Belinda Carlisle, the singer of the Go-Go's, sort of played drums in the Germs for a very, very short time. This is Pat Smear, who was the guitarist of the Germs, ended up playing in a couple lesser-known bands, Nirvana and eventually the Foo Fighters. And this is a guy that really got all of us into punk rock. His name is Rodney Bingenheimer, and he had a radio show called Rodney on the Rock. And he had not a very good radio voice, but he was the first one to play the Ramones on the radio. He was the first one to play the Germs on the radio. Was the first one to actually play Guns N' Roses on the radio. Because one of the things that attracted me to the band Guns N' Roses is Guns N' Roses was really felt very punk. Guns N' Roses did whatever they want. You didn't know if when you saw Guns N' Roses if they were going to play on stage for 3 hours or if Axl was going to kick somebody in the jaw and get off stage. Duff McKagan from the band Guns N' Roses truly comes from a punk rock band. He's from Seattle, played bass in a band called The Farts. I will tell you about their songs. I don't really know much about The Farts. Does anybody? Yeah, I'm not very familiar with The Farts. But moving along here, we see some of the other great LA punk rock bands, with the exception of this band from Ohio. I call this band my gateway band because when I was a kid and I worked at the Marina Del Rey skate park because I was all about skateboarding, and then when I found out about Devo, oh my God, because Devo was somebody that was different than everything else. So Devo, I love Devo, and so that was kind of a band that I really got into. And Devo did a video called Freedom of Choice at the Marina Del Rey skate park. And if you ever see that, Dwayne Peters, who is a pro skater and a crazy punk rocker that sang the US Bombs and stuff, is in that video quite a bit. But we also have some stuff from the Ramones, Black Flag, first punk rock 7-inch. The first time I ever saw Black Flag was when this 7-inch was out. And the original Black Flag singer was a guy named Keith Morris, who ended up becoming the singer of the Circle Jerks. I never saw Black Flag with Henry Rollins. I saw Black Flag with Keith Morris and a guy named Ron Reyes, that was my opinion, like the greatest era of Black Flag. And we see Fear, always scared of the band Fear. They had lyrics like, let's have a war so you can go die. And I got to meet Lee Ving like a couple years ago, and he was really nice. And I was kind of bummed out because he was like scary back then. But a lot of these guys get older and they're just like really, really nice. So love Fear. There's a Guns N' Roses album called The Spaghetti Incident. And it's an album of covers. And Fear has a song called I Don't Care About You. And Guns N' Roses cover that song. And if you look in the liner notes, I did background vocals on that. So I'm on a Guns N' Roses album singing the Fear song. But you can't tell that I'm on it.
Was Rollins in X after Black Flag?
Henry Rollins?
No. Who was with Exene and X?
As far as I know, X has always been X with the same original members.
Okay.
And I'll talk about that in 1 second. I don't believe Rollins was ever, because he wasn't the singer of X.
Yeah.
I mean, that was always John Doe and X-Team. Couldn't be anybody.
Oh, John Doe. Okay, that's
Yeah,
what I was
that was John Doe. Movie to Metal Year. I mean, I was in Decline of Western Civilization too. If you've never seen my part in it, you don't need to really look it up. I had long hair, I was drunk, and I was talking about girls at the Cat House, which was my club. And I can laugh at it now. But the first movie was Decline of Western Civilization Part 1. It was really instrumental. Now, there was a movie, a Cheech and Chong movie called Up in Smoke. Does anybody ever remember that movie? Well, they wanted to put a live band in it, and they decided to put the Germs in it. Now, this is an early show from the Germs. This is footage from the Germs, really early. Obviously, they are fucking horrible. Darby Crash, who I think at that time went by Bobby Pin. Now, I'm gonna let you watch this for a little bit. That's Pat Smear. So, this was this was taken out of the movie Up in Smoke because they believed nobody would actually believe there was a real band that was that cool. This is the Germs at the Honkat Cafe, which I might have been at that show because it was a Halloween show, and that was the first punk rock show that wasn't the Ramones that I went to. This was the wall from a club that was very big in Los Angeles called The Mask that I never went to. And now we mention X. And X is probably the band that I'd seen more than any other band. They just finished playing their last tour recently. They are so good. They play all different types of music. Some people would call it alt country. These original members are the same original members that are in there now. X would be the second band tattoo that I have because I really, really like the band X. And here's X right here. And when we talk about bands that were sort of metal crossovers, one of the ones of a band that we always think of being this metal band that really started as a punk rock band is Suicidal Tendencies. Back then in the LA and Orange County, there were a lot of gangs that followed punk rock, and there was a Suicidal gang that Lads and FFF and Vicious Circle, and the Suicidal Tendencies always had like scary Venice people that used to follow Suicidal Tendencies around. In later years, just to tell, I never told this story before, when I did talk radio, does anybody remember a show called Melrose Place? Mike Muir, the singer of Suicidal Tendencies, loved Melrose Place. So on my talk radio show, every whatever day it was, we would do a thing called the Melrose Mosh, and me and Mike Muir used to talk about what we saw on Melrose Place. So I wish I could find copies, because to hear me and Mike Muir talk about, like, he's like, yeah, niggas, so that was always kind of funny. I'll go quickly through here. More LA bands, punk, Fear, Germs, Circle Jerks. One of the bands, with a band that I'm still in touch with, that when you walk into your room, you know, a lot of kids like, I would run in my room and play Metallica and slam the door. Well, for me, it was TSOL. And TSOL was so great because Jack used to bring on kind of a goth type vision, you know, a look to it. And when you talk about bands and you talk about the Hollywood rock image thing, Social Distortion used to put a lot of, you know, the makeup and the clothes and the headband in the early days. They were really into the image, but obviously Mike is such a kind of genius when it comes to rock and roll. And here's an old picture of Mike Ness from Social Distortion, and here's an old picture of Jack Grisham. And I'm gonna start going a little faster, I promise. And for people that don't know, this is called an 8-track. Now, before the internet,
I had plenty of them.
you had 8 tracks, and you're gonna know what I'm talking about. We had CDs, and before we had CDs, we would have cassettes, we would have vinyl, but people don't really talk about 8 tracks. Now, if you had an 8-track and you would be driving in your car and listening to an 8-track, in the middle of a song, it would slowly fade out. Then you like to have to hit a button and it would switch to the other side.
Yep.
And I remember the album that I remember on 8-track that I had was did anybody remember the band The Tubes?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh, I love the two.
Huh?
Yeah.
Right, White Punks on Dope. The Tubes were also a band that I never really thought about it, but they were like, people talk about that it influenced the LA scene. They were also one of the very first like glam bands. The Tubes, you know, they were different than that. Talk to you later. They kind of had a different whole attitude. Circle Jerks. We have a lot of instruments from certain bands that have played here. This is Todd Youth played in the Germs. Played in the Misfits for a while. And the Blue Circle was very synonymous with the Germs. That was their thing. JFA was one of the big skateboard punk bands. Jodie Foster's Army. And are any of you familiar with the Cadillac Tramps? I will tell you just a little bit about this person because the reason I'm going to tell you is not necessarily about the music, but just because about this person and influence that this guy had on me. The singer of the Cadillac Tramps was a guy named Gabby. There was this guy that passed away, and he was bigger and more intimidating. And Gabby used to get on stage, one of the bands, punker bands that played my club, the Cat House. And Gabby used to get up on stage, and I always just remember this, because he would get up on stage, and he was like very thoughtful looking, obviously. And he'd get up on stage, and he goes, yeah, man, when somebody drives by, and they give you a middle finger like that, what I always like to do is I like to give them a smile by. And I look at that person, and I go, and I drive away. And I always remembered that. Because if somebody's really, really angry with you and they say, fuck you, and you say, no, fuck you, well, they're angrier and you're filled up with anger. And that's not a win-win situation. But if somebody says, fuck you, and you go, have a nice day, you're driving away in a great mood and they're even more angry. So that's the win-win situation. So I've always looked at situations if somebody's really angry with you, when somebody says, fuck you, and you go, thank you, have a nice day. What is their answer? And you feel great. So I've always remembered that stuff. Again, I suggest you come back here and look at some of this stuff because I always forget stuff as I walk through here. This is the original photograph from the Rancid album. And this room right here is very cool because this room is basically Mike Ness's living room. This is his furniture. There's some handwritten notes from some Social Distortion songs. If you guys would like to sit down on Mike Ness's couch and take pictures, I will take the picture for you, or if you want to just kind of look around here, or you can come back here later, or you can keep on walking through.
I'll take a picture of it.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
come on. It's Ness's couch.
You take a picture? You have your phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this place, I think as far as punk rock goes, if you have stuff in here, it's kind of like, oh,
What?
I have my stuff in this punk rock museum. They're going to be doing a reissue of that skateboard, and I feel something really sweet there.
This is a nice couch.
And if you don't know, one of the guys in here who helped put this whole museum.
They can just do the tour. We'll just stay here.
It's right.
We'll just stay here.
And the reason I like this museum so much is it's just very authentic. Hey, why don't you guys all sit down? Now you look familiar to me for some reason. Have I ever met you?
I might have flipped you off.
But that's everybody.
Look.
Now we have.
Good thought for sharing.
Everybody get in there, and when I take a picture, I want everybody to flip me off so I can post this picture. I go, everybody was so happy to see me, okay? If you don't know, one of the things that I've been doing for the past couple of years is, which is a dream of mine, I've been on tour doing spoken word, and I've been doing a 3-hour show that I just tell my whole story and stuff like that. And I got to play 45 shows, including 4 in Australia, which is really, really weird that people would show up there and talk. But it was really fun. So obviously you can see that I'm talking, but don't worry, it's not going to be 3 hours. I was in a band for a short time called Battery Club. And Battery Club had a lot of different members from different punk rock bands. And when Battery Club was playing shows, I was still on Headbanger's Ball. But I never wanted anybody to know that I was the guy from Headbanger's Ball, because we were open, we opened up the Offspring in the early days and played with Bass to Bass. But the bass player in our band was this guy right here, John Maurer, who was in Social Distortion, not in Social Distortion anymore, but he was in my band Battery Club. So we recorded a couple songs, and obviously nobody heard of us. Very, huh?
Do you know, is that Tim? Was that like an alternate photo for the album cover? Because it was ours, but that was like Tim.
I don't know.
Yeah, they said an alternate.
I think so, because yeah, I guess so.
We're standing on the lamp.
Well, you can walk back in a little. Next time I'll say it like as if I knew. Obviously, an old picture of the Misfits. And are you guys Misfits fans?
Yeah. Yes.
Glenn Danzig used to go to the Cat House. Glenn Danzig played my birthday party. But the fun story that I like to tell is you guys know who Doyle is, right? If you've ever met Doyle or know anything about Doyle, the only way I can describe him is one of the sweetest, kindest people. He loves kittens, he's a vegan, and he's this big, gnarly guy. I do want to tell you this story, and I'll be quick, and then we'll walk through the museum. For a short time, I worked for WCW, World Championship Wrestling, and the Misfits had a wrestling faction. And you know who Randy Macho Man Savage is? Macho Man's girlfriend hooked up with Doyle. And Randy Macho Man Savage would follow the Misfits, and he showed up to a show with a knife because he wanted to kill Doyle. And I think it was Zach, who was in Rise Against, was trying to talk Randy Macho Man Savage out of killing Doyle, which I thought was such a funny story. But if you had to go out, it would be pretty cool to say, like, yeah, man, had Riki Rachtman die, oh, he got killed by Randy Macho Man Savage. Like, that would have been kind of cool, right? I guess. Punk rock, just like metal, just like most factions, are sort of set up by different areas. You know, somebody said you're from the Bay Area, and the Bay Area in metal had the greatest thrash scene, you know, which I think was very influenced by punk rock. And here we have some of the Bay Area bands. Obviously, one of the more famous ones is the Dead Kennedys. And everybody knows, and we're going to go through that way also on the way back. And everybody knows, like, the term gatekeeping, which is so stupid. It's like, somebody's with a t-shirt, say, name 3 songs. Well, a friend of mine that currently plays guitar in LA Guns, he was a guitarist in Faster Pussycat. And when I met him, he said, like, I was into punk. He said, well, I'm really into old punk. I'm like, well, so am I. And my gatekeeping comment was, do you like the Avengers? Which is this band. And I really like the Avengers. I used to cover an Avengers song called American in Me. But a lot of people don't know the Avengers. So when he said, oh yeah, American in Me, I'm like, okay, we can be friends. Which is such a shitty attitude to have. But this was the Avengers, which came from the Bay Area. There was a singer piano in Houston. Really good band if you ever just want to check out the Avengers. I just thought that they were really, really good. you are in for a treat right now because some of these bands I don't know that much about. So if you know more stuff about them, please feel free to tell me. Of course, Husker Du.
Yep.
Flipper, I remember because as a kid, Flipper had a song where the lyrics were, I am an earthworm, I live underground, I am an earthworm. And that's how I remember, oh, Flipper, yeah. And when we move into some of the Bay Area, you know, we get into Operation Ivy, which is just a great kind of, you know, ska punk band that eventually became, some members eventually became Rancid. Now, I'm not that familiar with Faction.
That's Steve Caballero.
No kidding!
Yeah, he was.
No shit!
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, San Jose band.
So one of my earliest jobs was I worked at the Marines Del Rey skate park. So even though I wasn't friends with Cab or any of those other guys, like because some of them knew me from Headbangers Ball, now I've met guys like Hisoy and all those people. And I'm still friends with Jim Muir, which is, like when I went to this stuff, like I wear Dogtown stuff a lot, but now like sometimes Jim like, you and shit, and if somebody ever would have told 17-year-old Riki Rachtman that Red Dog would be giving you like a sticker or a t-shirt, it's like, that would be the coolest thing because Dogtown was like my favorite band. They were badass because, you know, I worked at the Marine Del Rey skate park and I always, you know, Tony Alva was the coolest cat in the world back then. JFA was a great skateboard punk rock band as well. Brian Brandon, the singer, was a great skater. And I did not know that about Faction. Thank you. Next tour, I'm going to go through the tour and tell everybody as if I knew it always. RKL is a band, I think stood for Rich Kids on Acid. And are any of you familiar with the band Municipal Waste? Municipal Waste is kind of a thrash band, but also kind of a punk band. And the singer Tony, I think, has recently been touring as the singer for RKL. And I'm wearing your shirt, Lamb of God. Lamb of God, which is a metal band, but they've always said, especially Randy, that they're a punk rock band that plays metal. And the Bad Brains did a bunch of shows with the singer of Lamb of God as the singer of Bad Brains. So, and there's also on YouTube a version of them doing Eye Against Eye. So that's pretty cool. Like, there's a lot of people that have, you know, punk rock roots.
When did they tour together?
No, they didn't tour together.
No, I mean, with Randy's front.
It was when Randy still had dreads. So I'm guessing it might have been maybe 7 years ago or something.
Wow.
Maybe. HR from Bad Brains is still doing stuff, but
Yes.
not with the Bad Brains. I don't know how HR is doing. It's always off and on, I
Yes,
guess.
he's going on tour now with Dead Kennedys.
Really?
I know he just played in Philadelphia, a small bar, within the last week or two, but then he's gone on tour.
Wow. When you talk about the scenes that I know nothing about, except I thought it would have been cool to be a fly on the wall, was the New York City hardcore scene. And the reason that I like to talk about Agnostic Front is Vinny, their guitar player. I've seen them play recently. Vinny is probably like 70 years old, and when Agnostic Front plays, he gets out. I saw them open up for the Misfits, and when Agnostic Front plays, Vinny gets in the middle of the pit, plays guitar with all these people making a circle pit around him, and Vinny is just badass. Don't know him. Has a book out now called The Most Interesting Man in the World, I think. And I think there's an audio book that I want to get, because if anybody is New York, it's Vinny. And the way he talks, yeah, well, my brother up on the 3rd Street, and you know, those guys, and oh, the fuck. And I just love to hear that guy talk. So I just think Vinny's cool. And Agnostic, great documentary about some of the stuff that Roger went through as well. I think it's cancer. Some more New York City hardcore stuff. Big Chromax fan. And you know what was cool? I should have said this earlier. What really separated, I think, punk rock, especially in Los Angeles, because it really was kind of just do whatever the fuck you want to do, rebelling against parents and authority and stuff like that. And that, even though I am part of the metal scene, I never felt that in metal. I never felt that it was kind of like rebelling against authority, and it was kind of like, you know, we'll show them. And I think the thing that really started getting me out of punk rock, I was going to shows in 79, 80, And before it was before it was moshing, it was called slam dancing. And before it was slam dancing, it was kind of like pogo. Like everybody go to the shows like this. And then they started like slam dancing a little bit. And then it started getting violent, especially in Orange County. And then people were just getting hurt at shows. And that's when I kind of started stopping going to shows and started going to more metal shows and stuff like that. And now speaking about the Bad Brains, we're talking about some of the bands from the DC area. And obviously, I think, and I am not sure about this, but I think that it was the Bad Brains that came up with the word mosh. I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but I think so. And so here we have some of the, from the DC bands like Minor Threat. And I just like to say this. Minor Threat, in the end, were really part of this straight edge scene. And the whole straight edge scene was, no one night stands, no drinking, no drugs. And that was like the straight edge scene. And I owned the Cat House, which was, there was nothing, it was all about doing drugs, drinking, and being a slut. So everything that this band stood for, my scene was in the 80s rock scene was like the total opposite. And if any of you know the design with Paul Frank, if you don't, that's okay. But this is this monkey, the Paul Frank monkey, in the Alkaline Trio. And I can't really tell you that much about Alkaline Trio, except the guy in the band, Matt, is really into motorcycles and loves Ducatis. So I bonded with him just because he talked a lot about motorcycles. I thought he was a really nice guy, but I don't know that much about the band. Luna Chicks were a band from New York, and there was also a band called Cycle Sluts from Hell. There was just an L7. There were just an all-girl kind of garage punky rock band. L7 played my club, the Cat House, and there's a story that came out of there that was very famous about, I think it was Jennifer taking a tampon out and throwing it at the audience. That happened at my club, the Cat House. And again, some of the stuff that we'll kind of breeze over, please feel free to walk through and check this out again. You were at that show? I've heard, oh, look, they have motorcycles on the thing. Yeah, Matt was a really nice guy. He's really into motorcycles. So sometimes if I can bond to talk to people around motorcycles. And as long as they don't ask me technically. He's still rad. Yeah, he's a big Ducati. That's Skiba. You was? I do.
Yep.
See, that didn't sort of let me look at that. I really came in here not knowing anything. That's somebody else says he has the nature is mine.
Best way to do it. Fake it till you make it.
Still does. I believe he does. Ducatis. I'm pretty sure he does.
That is my client.
What do you do? What do you take photos for? Oh, really? I tried to get Ref to sponsor my ride. I just went 5 days ago to the BMW Diamond Pack in South Carolina. We have another, she was on the show, Master. She's in my wife, and she rides on the back and keep to tell us where to go. It's really fun, and I was trying to get the sponsor. He was trying to get Levitt, and we got from Levitt. He's like, dude, I'm in a Death Angel, but he never really put me up with a key or anything like that. And here we have Offspring. My band Battery Club got to go out on tour with Offspring.
Do you know Ron?
What?
Do you know Ron Welty, the drummer?
The scene Offspring?
Yeah.
So I went on tour with Offspring,
Yeah.
okay? And I saw Offspring play like at a NASCAR race, and I went up and every one of them looked at me like they didn't know who I am. And I don't expect everybody to know who I am. But it's like, we went on tour with them. I mean, I did Headbanger, but just, or maybe they don't get out of it.
Oh.
So I didn't talk to them. And obviously I let it go, because I knew that the 3 days.
He's a friend of ours, Ron is.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, they kicked him out, so he doesn't like the rest of them, and
Maybe that's
legal issues on that side, but yeah.
too. So this couch is a couch that is pictured with Kurt Cobain on it. Kurt Cobain passed out on this couch. And I have my Kurt Cobain story as well. If you've never seen it on YouTube, oh, by the way, if you ever, Sam I Am, a band that nobody really knows, I thought they could have been like the next Foo Fighters. Really good kind of punk rock band. I really, really like Sam I Am. I don't want to mention that. It was like the Texas section. Well, I don't know, because there's a lot of bands that already got Nirvana here. I don't think so. Doors weren't from Texas. I don't know, because I know there's a section with the Big Boys. There's something from the Big Boys, and Just Gates and the Big Boys was also in the band Junkyard. So my little story about Nirvana is, if you've never seen it, on Headbangers Ball, there was an episode where I interviewed Kurt Cobain, and he wore a yellow ball gown, and I was on the show, and I walked in there to meet Kurt Cobain, and he was passed out on the carpet, and I wanted to meet him, and the first time I ever talked to him, he was on Headbangers Ball, sitting next to me with his big yellow ball gown, and he was like, yeah, this is the Headbangers Ball, so I wore like the ball gown. And I didn't really get it until many years later, and everybody goes, oh, Riki was so uncomfortable during that interview. And I wasn't. I was just like kind of apathetic. It's like, you know, if you don't want to be on the show, don't be on the show. And I was really disappointed, because when that album Bleach came out from Nirvana, that was a good album. I saw Negative Creep and everything. So, but Kurt Cobain passed out on this couch. This was, I believe, a compilation from Rodney on the Rock. I never looked at it before. It was Rodney on the Rock compilations, where we found out a lot of different punk rock bands.
Isn't it Ralph Steedman or something?
Is it?
Is it Ralph Steedman?
Who?
Ralph Steedman?
Oh,
Or is it just in the style of him?
I don't know. Kind of looks like him.
What? I know the band now.
I don't think so.
It's not, but yeah, it's in the style.
It's
That goes in
definitely
the style.
style.
Now, I think some of you might know this, but there was a time when we didn't have the internet. Now we have the internet. That's how we can find out about bands. Well, the way that we used to find out about bands when we were in the scene was we would go to shows, and people would put out fanzines. And fanzines were amazing, because you would have people that were fans start writing. They would make copies of it. We'd go to a place we had called Kinko's. We'd make copies, and you would staple them together. And that's how we found out about all the bands.
Cream magazine too.
What?
Cream magazine.
Cream was a fanzine?
Well, it wasn't a fanzine, but that was
Right.
another thing where you
Yes.
learn about new fans.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff,
yeah. With the major publications always.
yeah.
But these were all underground, and there was a fanzine at one time called No Shit Magazine. And the lady Mariah gave me a copy of No Shit Magazine, and there was a little plastic baggie on it with a little white piece of paper, and it said, in case of take this in case of emergency. So I thought it was kind of a joke, so I put the piece of paper on my tongue and woke up in the middle of the night completely tripping on acid by myself, which is a long story, but it was just a very weird story. So, when there's some you see bands like Suicidal Tendencies, Debbie
Nick Lowe insults everybody.
Oh, man.
I want to read that now. I want to read that.
and these were all put out by fans. This is pretty easy, and people guess this pretty quickly. This is an Operation Ivy show. Now, who can identify the guy in the mullet in this picture?
Which guy?
The guy in the mullet.
Billy Joe Armstrong?
Yep.
Yep.
This guy in the mullet is Billy Joe. You never knew he rocked the mullet. Obviously, Fat Mike from NoFX, they had Fat Records. I think this is really awesome, because I know, because I had the Cat House and Headbangers Ball, that people were always giving me demo tapes or stuff like, and there was nothing I could do. I can't imagine what it would be like to run a record label. Now, whenever you sent your record label, whenever you sent your demo tape to Fat Records to see if you could get a deal, they would send you back this letter, and it might say, "You fucking suck, don't ever send this to anything, go back to working at McDonald's," or we're a punk rock label, not interested in new wave funky Nirvana wannabes, or, I mean, just all these different things. And this is what you would get sent back from Bat Records if you ever try to get your a record, you know. And if you're fan of the band NoFX has a song called LA, and in it, there's a lyric about going to the Cat House because the girls are there and they always getting free. And I thought that was cool because Cat House was my club. And Eric, even though everybody thinks about Guns N' Roses and that, you know, there was a little bit of punk rock in the Cat House. And Eric used to always hang out at the Cat House. And there was a guy that used to always hang out at the Cat House every Tuesday night. And he had long hair, and he used to hang out on his Harley with his denim jacket open, with his shirt, no shirt, and he used to just sit there and pick up girls. And that guy was Steve Jones of the Sex Pistols. And he used to just pick up girls at the Cat House all the time. Oh, I'm going to tell you another story about me. But it does equate to something in this punk rock museum. So I tried to start this rockabilly band at one time called the Fairlanes. And we had a bass player. And right before we were going to play our first show, our bass player played in another band. And he quit our show because he wanted to focus on the other band. And I'm like, you're really going to quit before our first show? He goes, yeah, I got to play in the other band. And I told him, okay, Jay, if you really think your other band, Bad Religion's going to be bigger than the Fairlanes, go right ahead. So Jay Bentley was a friend of mine since I was a little kid, still a friend of mine. And right here we have the masters from the Bad Religion album, Stranger Than Fiction. And Epitaph used to put on these shows, and Epitaph, obviously a label that was started by Brett Gurewitz from Bad Religion. And I mean, look at this, $6 to get in, $5 t-shirts, which are just so rad. You had so many great bands put in too. This is the original painting from the Bad Religion album, Against the Grain.
Yeah, Lil Cool J, Public Enemy, and the Vandals.
One other thing you see cool here is when you look at some of the flyers, you'll see bands like Pennywise, but you also see like, you know, LL Cool J, Public Enemy, and the Vandals.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if I mentioned it when we were in the New York City hardcore area, but you'd see a lot of hardcore shows with the Beastie Boys playing it. So, are any of you familiar with the band The Lower Class Brats? Okay. During COVID, I recorded the Social Distortion song So Far Away. I think it's got up to 12 views right now, and it's on YouTube. But it was just me singing with Fred from that band playing all the other instruments. And we were just I went into my closet and sang So Far Away, and he recorded every instrument, and that's on YouTube. And I did it with that guy from The Lower Class Brats. Die Huns was a band that I know some mentioned the skateboard correlation that Dwayne Peters was in. And also in that band was Corey Parks. Corey Parks was this 6-foot blonde girl. They used to blow fire, and she used to play in a band called Nashville Pussy. And she was with Dwayne Peters, and she was very, very intimidating. And Corey Parks was also the flower girl at my wedding.
Oh.
And when I walked down the aisle, she threw out white guitar picks.
Oh.
And it was just really, really cool. I didn't know for now. Okay, this right here is a garage.
It is the right
It's set
step.
up exactly like the garage that Pennywise used to rehearse in. This is pretty much Pennywise's garage. And I have an interesting Pennywise story that I don't know if you've heard of this story or not, but I'll tell you exactly what happened because I was there. I used to host a show called Loveline with Dr. Drew. Have any of you know who Dr. Drew is?
Yep.
Okay. I hosted a show called Loveline with Dr. Drew. It was just a local show. When I hosted it, it became syndicated nationally. I never picked any guests. I suggested a band that I wanted to bring on Loveline, and they said, okay, and that band was Pennywise. So here's the show where we give advice to kids. Dr. Drew, very respected. And before we went on, Fletcher, and if you don't know who Fletcher is, Fletcher looks much more like he'd be in the Hells Angels than he'd be in Pennywise. He's a very big, large, scary individual. Fletcher tells me, I'm gonna throw up on Dr. Drew. I was like, what? And Barbara says, Fletcher's gonna throw up on Dr. Drew. and he was drinking all this stuff like liquor and something, I don't see that, something that makes you throw up. We're on the radio, and in the middle of the show, Fletcher projectile vomits all over Dr. Drew. It's on, you can hear the audio on YouTube. This was the band that I suggested to bring into the studio. KROQ banned Pennywise, and then they got really big and they kind of couldn't do anything about it. So they started playing Pennywise again, and they brought him into the studio, and Fletcher did something like barricaded himself in the radio station with a gun, which is not the same thing as throwing up on somebody. The police got involved. I wasn't there for that. I don't remember, but I know I always heard the story. So here's my Pennywise story. And a vomit story at the same time. Stina Hagen. Some of the bands that I really liked that were English bands were Cockney Rejects, Stiff Little Fingers, Sham 69, just great rock bands in my opinion. And it's funny, being a guy from Headbangers Ball, how many stories I actually have that involved me. People always said, well, yeah, it was Quiet Riot that invented the word headbanger. And I'm like, no, it really wasn't, because the Ramones had a song called Susie is the Headbanger. But even before that, the Cockney Rejects had a song called Headbanger. And that's the first time that I really kind of heard the word, but there's some stuff from Stiff Little Finger here, and some German punk rock bands and stuff like that. Cockney Rejects guitar, I didn't notice that. Are any of you familiar with the band The Crass? They're an old boy band, and they're still playing, still sounding. Yep. I do a thing every year called the Headbangers Boat, and it's put on by Lamb of God, and they always bring on like some punk rock bands, and the Exploited will be on this one. I am going to be on a cruise ship during Halloween with Clutch and the Exploited. Who would have ever thought that the Exploited would be playing on a cruise ship? And now we are going to walk into an area that out of any area in this whole museum is very personal to me, and I know I'm trying to, how I'm related to all the stuff in there, and a lot of stuff especially when we get upstairs, I'll just go, have fun. But we're gonna walk into an area that I always get a little bit emotional about, and join me, because this is one of my favorite places in the whole place. And now I'm gonna talk about Motorhead. If you don't like the band Motorhead, I apologize, because I'm going to talk about Motorhead, and I also apologize because it means you don't have very good taste in music. Motorhead really was a punk rock band. Lemmy was a true, honest, very good friend of mine. When I had the Cat House, Motorhead played the very last night at the Cat House. If you're interested, at the end of the show, they're selling Headbangers Ball and Cat House shirts. We have a Motorhead Cat House shirt that's very, very rare. But the reason that I get emotional in here, because I say that Motorhead and Lemmy was a very good friend of mine. So when Lemmy died, he had a request that he was to be cremated, and that his ashes were to be put into bullets, and the bullets would be handed out to very close personal friends of Lemmy. And I have one of those bullets. So whenever I talk about Lemmy, and whenever I talk about this bullet, I get very sentimental about it, because I love Lemmy, and because like Lemmy's here with us right now. And when I got this in the mail, I opened the mail and I picked up the bullet and I go, oh, of course, it's a Lemmy. And it says Lemmy on the bullet. And my wife was reading the piece of paper that went with it, and she goes, no, Lemmy's ashes are in this, and he asked this to be handed out to certain people. I cried like a bitch. I was just like, oh, yeah. So on Monday, I'm doing the show called Pawn Stars, and I'm doing the show called Pawn Stars After Dark, and they asked me to bring 2 collectibles that I have, and one of the collectibles I have is this, and I'm just saying right now, it truly doesn't matter how much I could possibly be offered for this. I will never, ever, ever, ever sell this. If my house burns down, I'm grabbing the bullet, and then I'm waking up my wife. So, okay, not true. But this is very, very important to me, because I love Motorhead. I have 2 Motorhead tattoos. The only bands I have 2 Motorhead tattoos. I have an X tattoo and I have a Rolling Stones tattoo. But here's some stuff from Motorhead in here. If I told you of all of the bands, what's the only band that I never saw live that I wish I did? I never saw The Clash. The Clash, I hated the album Combat Rock. I hated the song Rock the Casbah. But Clash is still a band that I'll always listen to. I did see Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros when they opened up for Brian Setzer. Did any of you ever see The Clash? I never saw The Clash. The reason I like The Clash is because if I'm in a mood that I want to hear reggae, I can listen to The Clash. If I'm into some rock and roll, I can listen to The Clash. I really do like The Clash. Clash wrote great songs. I saw a documentary on The Clash. It didn't necessarily make Joe Strummer look like the greatest guy, but I don't know him, so I won't say. So I'll keep my idea on what I thought they were like.
It's really his telly, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's the other thing. You see instruments like Joe Strummer's guitar, and they're just thrashed, And I think they did a reissue of the Joe Strummer guitar that they sell that looks like
relic,
that.
yeah.
That they do, right?
Yeah,
they make one that looks...
I've never seen the original, so that's crazy. That's awesome.
It's cool, right? Now, the other way, because there was no internet, that we found out about bands, is through flyers. And flyers were great because there were a lot of artists that got their start in flyers, bands that make their flyers themselves. They were very original, they were really cool. I get to look here and see some of the bands that I actually got to see live. And when we talk about these jackets, I cannot tell for sure how many of these are real jackets, with the exception of, I think that one right there might be Randy Blythe's from Lamb of God's jacket, because like I said, he was a punker, not necessarily a metal kid. And I think that might have been his jacket. So I don't really know how old some of these jackets are. So I won't say.
What band's ATM is that?
Huh?
What band's ATM is that?
I'm trying to think of that. Let me have another cup of coffee. I'll make something up.
Okay, we'll come back to it.
But this is the best odds in Vegas right here. But it's still going to probably cost you something. Hi, Leah. How are you? I'm good. Very good. And not to obviously do a plug, but here's the shirt that we have. This is, sorry, it's my wife, Leah. You weren't in there when I was there, right?
No.
That was the very final night of the Cat House at Motherhead's Press, and that's the shirt. And we have him here. I do sung him out of our band. Real cop. And that's the only time I'm going to plug anything else here. And now we're going to go upstairs. There's something upstairs that you are going to love that I think is really cool. But like I said, I'm a downstairs guy. I know a lot more about what's going on downstairs than what's going on upstairs with a lot of these bands I don't know that much about. But there is some cool stuff that I'm going to show you upstairs. But follow me, and there's something upstairs that you're really going to dig for 2 reasons. 1, I'm not going to talk. And 2, do any of you play any instruments? Okay. Well, follow me upstairs. And as we walk through the gift shop, by no means ever have any of your food by any of the employees of it, because they will eat your food, they do buy it. And the greatest thing is, you can't tell, 2 of the people that work here right now are AI. Let's see if you can figure out who he is when you come out. And how many museums can you go to where you come down to the museum and you can also get smashed? And that's a soundboard from a really cool bar in Anaheim called Linda's Doll Hut. And a lot of bands played there, Social Distortion and stuff like that. And now we'll venture upstairs. Sean, can you turn the music down? I hate saying that. There's something else that's really cool that they do at the museum. Every time we go to the museum, we take somebody that has never tattooed before and give them a spot tattooing. This guy was on the last tour. He's never done a tattoo in his life.
That's right.
And today he gets the tattoo summit.
It's really amazing, and also I'm handicapped, which is cool.
He's blind.
Really
He's blind.
That, which is nice. So
And
not only have I never
narcolepsy.
tattooed before, but I'm also mentally disabled. I like to say handy capable. So if you do want to get a tattoo, with all that being said, I'm open to do it, but it is my fourth piece. We will give you 20% off if you get a cat house tattoo.
No, he's gonna do that. The truth is, I've known Sean for a while. Sean is a very talented tattoo artist. He's got some really cool punk rock flash up there, and to get tattooed by Sean at the Punk Rock Museum is really cool. And I'm joking because Sean's my friend, and he's really
It's good to
great
see you all.
tattoo.
Yeah, absolutely. Ricky's a great guy, and it's been a pleasure to know
Fuck
him
off,
for all
Sean.
these years. You all take care and have fun, all right? Get loose.
Come back up here a little bit later. There's some great posters up here. If you want to get some posters that I really like, there's probably one that I'm gonna get.
And you can purchase those at retail if you do like anything, okay? Right on.
Now, as we come up here, as I stated before, I am a first floor kind of guy. So we're gonna go kind of briefly through some of this and then end somewhere really cool. The reason that I say that I'm a first floor guy is, I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't shut up at all on the first floor. I don't know a lot about a lot of these bands up here, and that's just because I'm old and I don't like some of them. But that's not to say that they're not great bands. Some of you might really like them. I don't know that much about them. So we'll just walk through, but I will point out some other stuff up here still. Are any of you fans of Descendants or all? Well, I'm gonna show you something very cool a little bit later. But we have Milo, we have, who else here? Which I didn't notice before, we have King Diamond? Everybody King Diamond fans? Are you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love King Diamond. And this is tribute to a club called St. Vitus in New York that I can tell you absolutely nothing about. And some of these bands, with the exception of Rocket from the Crypt, who I really do like, which I kind of thought would have been bigger, a lot of these bands I really do know nothing about. And now we can walk in here very quickly, but I'm going to admit something in here that I'm very embarrassed about, and I really ask you not to repeat when you leave this room, okay? So this is a room that's kind of dedicated to the Warp Festival, which you're going back out there. It was really fun because yesterday on the tour, there was a guy that goes, "Oh, how did that band Bleed the Dream?" Now the reason I'm gonna just be briefly about some of the bands that are up here that I don't know that much about, but I'm gonna come clean. Please, don't hold this against me. I fucking love My Chemical Romance. I don't know what it is. I fly to go see their show. I'm gonna go see them in Chicago with Devo opening. I don't like emo music. I don't like the whole emo scene. I don't look at them as an emo band. As soon as I walk out that room, I'll never admit it again. But I'm really, does anybody else like an MCR? They're fucking good. They're really, really good. No guy said, yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are. We tried to cover them.
Huh?
You don't know.
Are you a musician?
Tried to cover them.
What song did you try to cover?
Way too many.
Right.
We've been trying to get a tribute going for a long time, and it's so hard. It's so hard.
Well, I found out that Mikey's Gerard's brother, that when they were kids, they used to watch Headbangers Ball. So they wrote me a letter on Instagram. I was like, dude, like I'm the biggest fan. So I got to go to the show and I got to meet him, and I was just like, and I'm probably the fucking oldest guy in the whole place. And I'm like, I'm a really big fan of My Chemical Romance, which they found very hard to believe. And I just found out. I took pictures of them, but now I'm going to go see them in Chicago with Devo opening. So, and just to show how cool they are, with their tour, they got to pick who's opening of their show. And one show they have Pixies, one show they have Alice Cooper, one show they have Idols, and I decided to go to the one that has Devo playing. So, but that's about all I can say in this one. There was a time a long time ago that tattoos weren't always acceptable. I know you find that hard to believe, but I got my first tattoo in about 1980, And I believe the band that really led me to getting my first tattoo was this band, the String Cats. Still love the String Cats. Obviously rockabilly, but still a little bit of punk rock roots. I mean, just no shame in loving the String Cats. In here we have some bands that are really crossover bands. They're kind of hard to talk about what genre they fit into. Oh, Refused. Is this jacket from Refused? Are you guys familiar with Refused? The Refused have a song called New Noise that's fucking just great. Look at this song. Is that a fucking great song?
It's amazing. Yeah.
So they're gonna go out and like on tour again. So I'm gonna see them. Municipal Waste is a thrash band, but like punky, and they got a sense of humor, and I really like Municipal Waste as well. Definitely check out the song by The Refused that I just mentioned. And oh, very much. So this is Juliet and the Licks, and the singer of Juliet and the Licks is the actress Juliette Lewis. And I saw him. It's kind of cool. He's kind of like a little crazy, like you think she was, you know? This leather jacket, by the way, that has the Misfits and has Bad Religion. This is an old jacket from My Chemical Romance. Proud to show you the room that I know fucking nothing about. Except that a lot of people like these bands. And if you do, that's okay. I just don't know really that much about them. So you can come back and look at it later. The one thing, I know that some of us are talking about skateboard. Hold on a second, don't peek in there yet. I've got a surprise for you. I've got a big surprise for you. So as we come in here, again, Dwayne Peterson and US Bombs, that's his jacket. And there's a band, we were talking about Corey, who was my flower girl. There she is in the blue shirt, that's Corey, which is kind of cool. I kind of like the shirt, but I'm not gonna comment on the shirt because I don't know who we're here with today.
Go ahead, comments.
I'll tell you this, okay? I'm from Hollywood, but I live in North Carolina now. My neighbors wouldn't like the shirt. I'll just say that. I live in the South. Okay. Now, I'm gonna take you to something that I think you're all gonna like very, very much. Come on, everything.
I can't believe it.
There's several reasons that I really like being in here. One is, of course, the music, the history that's coming from this room. You are going to get the opportunity to play some of these instruments if you want. But the thing that I like the most about this room is I'm going to shut the fuck up and let my friend Raucous tell you some really cool stuff about this room.
Hello. So yeah, this is all real deal, stage used and abused gear. You're welcome to pick it up, and if you want to play them through amps, I'll plug them in for you. But what we got is Green Day's Road case. They would keep all Billy Joel's guitars in here, and Timmy would work on them on top, kind of like what I'm doing right now for Mick Rossi from Slaughter and the Dogs. This is the first guitar his mom ever bought him when he was 12 years old. Most of that Slaughter and the Dogs Do It Dog Style record up there was written on this guitar. He was obviously a big David Bowie fan, and Mick Ronson was David Bowie's guitar player. Got a Ziggy on the side there. Mick Ronson ended up playing on that record, so he's actually played this guitar before. Since he got this when he was 12, he didn't want to upset his mom too much when he was about to carve fuck off on the back, and he changed it to FC UK and told her it was football club. So there's that. This here is Pat Smear's guitar from the last show with the Germs, the first few shows he did with Nirvana. I've also seen pictures of him playing it with like Lil Lovitch and all kinds of weird different stuff. But that's a few $1 million worth of Hagstrom right there. That's the bass that I used in The Vermin and FSP and Self Abuse and a bunch of other bands. Norwood from Fishbone. This one is Mike Herrera. This goes along with that amp over there in the corner. These were originally in the Pennywise garage downstairs. That's the original gear that was in there. But since we have bands come in and play in there, sometimes we move these up here because, like, this is the original. This is Jason's Bro-Am amp. Like, he wrote Bro-Am on this before he died. So we try to keep it up here to keep it a little safer. Mike Herrera from MXPX. This is Pete from Sick of It All. This is Carl's bass from the Descendants.
Which one? Some of you said that they were big. Which one? Was it you that was just big Descendants all fan, or?
Oh yeah,
that's Carl Alvarez's bass.
Yeah, this is the actual bass he used for Milo Goes to College, and then when it switched over to All. His roadie from back in those days just passed away a few months ago, and the family sent a text to Carl, and they're like, "Hey, we think we have your All bass." So he's like, "Send me a picture." They sent a picture, and he's like, "Dude, that's the Descendants and All bass." They're like, "We want to give it back to you." And he's like, "No, I'm sending you guys plane tickets. I'm flying you to Vegas, and we're going to give it to the museum." So it was a pretty special moment when his whole family got to come in here and watch it get hung up. This one is Cheetah Chrome's prototype for his line of guitars that came out last year. Tim Armstrong's first Rancid guitar. As you can see, it's the same guitar, just before and after. And that picture's from '94, so this would have been the first album. Fat Mike from NoFX's bass, Fat Mike's amp, Melvin from NoFX's amp, Mike Roach from TSOL. This is Joan Jett's COVID guitar. Obviously, she didn't send us that one. She's been playing that for 47 years, and she's still playing it. So when she couldn't go on tour for the whole COVID thing, this is the one she played at home. And then she signed the back of the neck and sent it off to us a few days before we opened up. This is my favorite piece in here. This is Chet Lair's guitar and amp from Wasted Youth. The album Reagan's In came out in 1981. I didn't buy it till 1983, but that album changed my life. That was my Fuck Authority album.
Wasted Youth was?
Yeah, man. I mean, that Fuck Authority. That was my first Fuck Authority album. And that I can plug that guitar into that amp 40 years later and have it still sound just like that album is magic to me. This is also the head that he bought from Greg Ginn from Black Flag. So this recorded the first Black Flag 45, the first Wasted Youth album. When you watch Decline of Western Civilization, it's the amp that's behind them in the church scenes because Chet was playing with Red Cross at the time. Incestuous punk rock families. And he's also Lucky Lair from the Circle
Lucky
Jerks,
right
brother.
there, right?
Yeah, that's Lucky
on
playing
drums.
with them. Yeah, Lucky from the Circle Jerks was in Wasted Youth for a few shows. Brendan Kelly from the Lawrence Arms. This is the stinkiest bass I've ever come across in my life. This room literally stunk for a month and a half because of Brendan. He would drink slushy and rum, is what he told me. Because when he came up here, I'm like, what the fuck is this? What is all of this stuff? And he's like, oh yeah, back then I would drink slushies and pour rum in it. And I was never really good at getting it in my mouth, so... Trevor from Face to Face. He brought this one in after he played punk rock bowling down the street and then brought this here right afterwards. 2 days later, it starts beeping. Beep, 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 beep. I'm like, why the fuck is this guitar beeping? It's not an active pickup. I flip over the back, I take it off, nothing. I take this one off. He velcroed an air tag to the other side of this so he can always track his guitar. If anybody's a guitar player, that is a brilliant idea, and everybody should do it. This is Zach from Rise Against, including the amp that he used when he was in Guar. The Me First and the Gimme Gimme section, Spike sent us the ukulele, and we got Joey Cape's guitar and Chris Shiflett's. I've got Fat Mike's too, but it was in a basement in Berkeley for years, and it's just the neck just is twisted. Gabby from the Venomous Pinks, Rob from Strung Out. We've also got his amp there. This is Fletcher's entire setup from the early Pennywise days. Like I said, this is the one that would have been down in that garage downstairs, and one of the few guitars he didn't smash back then. Ibanez specially makes guitars bigger for Fletcher now, because that looks like a toy on him. He's a monster, and that literally looks like a toy on him. I mean, that's a little baby guitar. So they literally scale guitars bigger for him now, so they look regular on him, and his hands can fit them. Will from The Story So Far, Chris from Pansy Division, Matt Skiba from Alkali Trio sent us out that one. Brendan from Mercy Music. Eugene from Gorgo Bordello brought us our first acoustic guitar. He was pissed that there weren't any up here. And he's like, where's the acoustic? I'm like, there is none, Eugene, not really punk rock. The fuck you say, motherfucker? And he runs downstairs and comes back up with this. Because this fucking lives here now. Oh, okay, bro, yeah. Then he brings his tour up and he grabs it and he's like, okay, this is traditional Ukrainian protest song. And he starts playing this 2-note song. And then he goes, okay, this is Woody Guthrie. And he starts playing this 2-note Woody Guthrie song. Then he's like, okay, this is Sick of It All. And he starts playing this basically 2-note Sick of It All song. And he goes, you see the similarities between these? The song, it's the story you're telling that's important. The music, who cares? When you get to the chorus, 4 or 5 words, I don't like this. And like, you just wrapped up protest music from around the fucking world in one little thing. It was beautiful. James from the Dropkick Murphys. This is Pete D from The Addicts. John Feldman from Goldfinger. Morgan from Kitty. Tony from Pierce the Veil. And the icing on the cake, this is the Wesley Willis Rock and Roll McDonald's I Whoop Batman's Ass keyboard.
I just think it's so great that every time we go up here, some people know who Wesley Willis is.
Oh my God.
Do any of you know Wesley? Do all of you know what it's Wesley Willis? See this? This isn't like, oh, it sounds like this. This is what his music sounds like. He's like a... His lyrics are like, you know, rock and roll. I don't know what he was, you know, little
I
off.
whooped fat man's
ass. Yeah. That's the actual chapter he played in front of the building, the BMG building in
And I go,
Chicago.
no, does it go T-S-O-L, T-S-O-L? He's like, you've heard it. I'm like, no. That's just how all Wesley songs went.
Do any of you want to pick up these instruments? If you don't, you can walk through the tour again and then come back
Yeah,
here.
I'm gonna play something.
But I'm pretty much done here. I just want to say thank all of you for kind of hanging out with me. One of my favorite things to do is talk about me. And so I got to do it with all of you guys. I hope you guys learned some stuff. And if not, you can definitely walk through here, definitely play instruments. Yeah, we tired. If you like, you can find me on social media. I do big motorcycle ride all over. Actually, I'm running bike week in February, so. Would you know any companies that can help me out? All right.
Do my best.
Very nice meeting all of you guys. Have a really good time.
Thank you.
Thank you.